Inspired talks of Swami Vivekananda, Pranam Mantra. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suray Sachet Sukha Swarupaya Swami Nethapaharine. The discussion that we had regarding Swamiji's talks on July 31st, 1895 is continuing. And on that day, Swamiji was actually talking mostly from Gita, but he talks about various things, and it's a beautiful combination of or assorted subjects, assorted topics keep coming, and it's wonderful. The central theme being feel the spirit within. Before before we start with what Swamiji discussed that day, just think for a minute. Those of you who have been listening to this talk, particularly those who have been following the series of talks by Swamiji, which is actually from marvelous book, Inspired Talks of Swami Vivekananda. I tell you, there's a modern Gita because Swamiji has spoken on everything related to spirituality and religion. And the listeners who were with Swamiji at the Thousand Island Park, they were all Christians. Naturally, the world religion got incorporated in his discussions. When I say Gita, there's a huge similarity between Gita and Inspired Talks. That Gita was taught by Sri Krishna to Arjuna, but it was recorded by Vyasa, the great sage. So Swamiji had discussed these things with his disciples, but the note was made by somebody else. And like a note, like Gita, whole thing has come to us in a cryptic form, which requires explanation. I've tried my best. I've tried my best to explain what Swamiji might have wished to tell, and maybe in future, better speakers will come, better explanators will come, but the essence will remain the same. The way we have so many commentaries on Gita, the essence remains the same. Now, what is something that you people who have been listening to this series of talks, or anyone, anyone who thinks that they are, not they say that don't use he or she, they that when a person becomes spiritual, when a person wants to lead a religious life, what is the one thing that each one of them would want? It would be to know the spirit, to know God, to know Atman, whatever that in different religions that term might be different. And this knowing has to be here and now. If you look at the lives of the great prophets, whether that be Jesus or that be Lord Buddha, their experiences were here and now. And hence, my experience, your experience has to be here and now. But there's a very small problem with that. After all, they were prophets, they were greats. Is it possible for us to have the same kind of realization that they had? What they achieved in one life, maybe if we start today, we may achieve it in many lives. That's the natural thing to think. That's the most logical thing. Fair enough, nothing wrong with it. But but when you are on the path to spirituality, you would like to know whether or not you are growing. You would like to know whether or not you are progressing. I remember one beautiful incident. Once I had been to Sri Amarnath Ji. Amarnath Ji is in Kashmir, and that's the only pilgrimage that I ever had in my life. There's a shivling in a mountain cave. That shivling is formed from the water at that height and it becomes snow Shivalinga. Swami Vivekananda had also visited that. It was in 97 and very serious problem of terrorism and intrusion from the Pakistani side had begun. It was actually in full force. And when we were on our way, our guide, our porters, they were all Kashmiris and they were all Muslims. One very surprising thing that I found the porters were really poor and because of terrorism, etc., things had become real bad. And they were all Muslims. And the way we understand it, Muslims do not have any faith in Hindu system of religion, thought. I found each one of them would tell us, you are going to Baba Amarnath, please pray for us. Please pray for us. Things were pretty bad in Kashmir in those days. And then we reached Sheshnag as a halting point. And there were some technicians from the telecom department. We were having tea there, and one of those technicians, he had very beautifully summed it up the spiritual life. He said that, look, I've been working in this telecom company for 20 years, and I can proudly say that I know something about it. And you also have been in this monastic life for nearly 20 years. You should be knowing something about God. You should have some connection with God. That's the important thing. You should have some connection with God by now. If in 20 years you didn't have any connection with God, then it's shameful. That's what he meant to say. Bottom line was, he wanted to say that if you pray to Lord Shiva when you reach Amarnath, please pray for us. Please pray for prosperity. This is one side of the story that you people rarely hear from Kashmir because I myself experienced it, so I don't have any doubts. Now, that was a very interesting statement from him that since you, me, have been in this line of spirituality for so many years, now it was difficult for me to say that that's not how spirituality works, that's not how God relation works. But for us, for me, for you, we would like to have something. Christianity talks about signs. No, we don't believe in all those things. Hocus pocus. That's the only term you can use about that. These are all hocus pocus. Partly made up things, partly blind belief, etc. But we would like to know if we are growing. When we were kids, we loved showing our palms to anyone who claimed to know something about palmistry. That just to know, is there any hope for me? That kind of thing. Just like that in the field of spirituality also, we would like to know if there is any hope for us. Are we on the right path? Or has it all been a wastage? The scriptures promise everything for the devout. Like different religions will say that you will go to heaven, etc. And some will say that you will have a better birth and you will evolve, etc. But Gita is a wonderful book that way. Gita doesn't talk about going to the heaven. And Gita does talk about mukti, self-knowledge. But much more than that, the 10th chapter of Gita is unusually beautiful. Those of you who have some interest in Gita, you should read the 10th chapter of Gita. It's marvelous. Its poetry is marvelous, its content is marvelous, and its message is marvelous. If you check in the list of playlists on our channel, we have talk on Gita, and you can listen to the 10th chapter. There in that chapter, Lord Shri Krishna is describing how he is the best amongst any group of objects, any species, and animate, inanimate qualities, whatever that be. For example, Lord says that I am Ganga amongst the rivers, and I am Om among the spoken words. Hey, it's a huge list. Lord goes on enumerating, Lord goes on enumerating. The idea is that a person who is on this path will be perceiving whatever is mentioned in Gita or maybe in the Upanishads, anything that is similar to that. And you should have that feeling. When the Lord says that amongst the rivers I am Ganga, and you'll see how Hindus have looked at Ganga. We worship Ganga. We don't worship Ganga as a river. We worship Ganga as the manifestation of God amongst rivers. Amongst all rivers, Ganga has the best manifestation. What about other manifestations, other rivers? Well, they are all manifestation of God. Now, why it is like that? Because it is when a person wants to grow spiritually, first you see the God in the best, God in the good. And from there you move on to see God in everything. God in good, God in bad. Now, when you see God in good, God in bad, that's a very, very, very high state. But to begin with, you can start saying manifestation of God, presence of God in the best of something. In the Upanishads also, they have this Maisho Mriganam, etc. Amongst the animals, I'm the buffalo, bison, the powerful. So the innate idea of the 10th chapter is to say that look for the essence of anything and know that that is me. Dear listeners, if you can reach even that level, says Sthavarānam Himalaya, of all those things that do not move, I am the Himalayas. That is, of all the mountains, of all the hills, I am the Himalayas. Now, when you go to the Himalaya, and we worship Himalayas. Now, if you go to different parts of the country, you'll find that people worship the local mountain, local hill. Perfectly okay, nothing wrong with it. But for a Hindu, because Himalayas is mentioned in the Gita in that way, Himalayas have a very special value, that special thing. The ultimate goal is to feel the spirit within. But feeling the spirit within through meditation, etc., is not possible that easily. We think we can, but no, we cannot. To start with, look at the great look at the best and feel that Lord's manifestation is there in the best, in the greatest, in the mightiest. That is the way. Now, what Swamiji is discussing here is to make us feel that the spirit that is within you, that's the most important thing. Everything else is secondary. To begin with, start looking at the best that is outside. And he quotes Pavitranam Pavitruham. I am the sacred of the sacred, holy of the holy. I am the holiness of the holy, Swamiji quotes from the 10th chapter of Gita. I am the root. Each uses it in his own way, but all is I. I do everything. You are but the occasion. This thing Swamiji quotes that he cautions Arjuna that, look, Arjuna, it's me who does everything. You are just the occasion. You are just the medium. But since that is not the topic of our discussion, we will not get into that detail. Main thing is what Swami says, do not talk much, but feel the spirit within you. Spirit. The word spirituality comes from spirit, Atman, not the ghosts and goblins. Spirit, consciousness. Consciousness gets ruined through acts and through words. Instead of doing this and doing that, I mean, those who want to be spiritual, those who truly want to be spiritual, you get into various acts of like performing yajna, performing puja, etc. Actually, these are inferior things. Similarly, when you are into religious discussions, expounding things and coming up with various explanations, these are secondary things. Feel the spirit within. If you just have a look at the 10th chapter of Gita, and if you just see how Lord is showing that the essence of everything, whatever is there in this universe, its essence is He, the Lord. Whenever you look at something, catch hold of that, move to the infinite. It's like holding on to some link of a chain and keep on moving along the chain to reach the object with which the chain is tied. So, and then you are a jnani. You are knower of Atman. Jnani. Jnani is the expression used for people who know their essence, who know their true nature. Atma Jnani. Jnani is one who has known that spirit within. And that spirit within is Lord Himself. And the essence of everything, here is this pen. The essence of this pen, the spirit of this pen is God Himself. And this God and this God, they are not different. Now, for ordinary persons, it's very difficult to understand what exactly we are discussing. But those who have some kind of elevated mind, those whose understanding is evolved a bit, particularly after listening to all these talks, they will be able to understand what exactly we are discussing. Now, for people who are steeped into a dualistic system of thought, for them it's slightly difficult to understand. And actually, for them, spirituality is difficult, no doubt about it. This is knowledge, all else is ignorance. All that is to be known is Brahman. It's the all. Brahman. What's Brahman? Brahman is the essence of everything. It's like the ocean on which the manifested universe is like a huge wave. Every use wave has series of wavelets. There is just no end to all this. Know the ocean, be calm. Once you know what is the pure existence, once you know what's the substratum of everything, and you will be free. Because then you would have known what is Atman. You would have known what is God. From there, Swamiji moves on to discuss Sattva Rajas Tamas. Now, Rajas Tamas comes from Sankhya philosophy, but has been adopted in Vedanta massively, and it plays a very important role in Gita. And Sri Ramakrishna, in his Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, uses this Sattva Rajas Tamas extensively. Rajas means activity. Anything that has activity is Rajas. Anything that has some kind of inertness is Tamas. And Sattva is stability. We are, we are using these terms in a very simplistic way. Those who know, they know it. The entire universe that we know says that the entire universe is composed of these three kinds of particles: Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And everything in this universe, including our mind, is composed of these three. When one becomes predominant, the nature of the object is of one type. And when that object, the object is powered by some other particle, because Rajas, Tamas, Sattva, these three particles, they keep on struggling to overpower each other, always in a race to overpower each other. So sometimes an object may have more of Sattva, more of Rajas, or more of Tamas. Same with mind, same with our body, same with our thoughts, same with our speech. Sattva binds to the search for happiness. Now, when a person has too much of Sattva, it searches for happiness. When a person becomes depressive, when a person becomes suicidal, there is more of tamas in that person. And knowledge. Sukh sangena badnati, jnana sangena chanaga. Sattva also binds. All these three particles, they keep the soul, the spirit bound to this universe. Sattva binds through happiness and knowledge. If you are running after knowledge, if you are a seeker of knowledge we don't mean spiritual knowledge. It means that there is Sattva in you. Are you a seeker of pleasure? In that case, the predominant force within you is of Rajas. Are you a seeker of sleep, inertness? There's more of Tamas in you. The goal is to take your mind from Tamas to Rajas and from Rajas to Sattva, and then go beyond all these three qualities. Rajas binds through desire, Tamas binds through wrong perception and laziness. The wrong perception that we have in this world, this world, in reality it's God, but we perceive it as objects and persons. Conquer the two lower by Sattva and then give up all to the lower and be free. What's the way? Get rid of Tamas. Give up sloth, give up laziness, give up too much of sleep, give up this desire to eat too much, and also give up the desire to be active. Keep your mind at a very high level of unification with God. That's Sattva. When your general demeanor is that of happiness, when you have an extremely pleasing personality, when people, those who come in contact with you, those who come near you, feel that happiness, the joy, know that now Sattva has become predominant within you. That means if you want, if you try, you can go beyond these three qualities, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. You can be one with God. If you don't, Sattva will continue, or if you are not careful enough, you may fall down. The Bhakti Yoga realizes Brahman very soon and goes beyond the three qualities. Now, Bhakti Yoga Swamiji is discussing from Gita, 12th chapter. And thing is, those who take a particular path, they naturally talk extremely highly of their path. The Swamiji will be discussing a lot about Bhakti Yoga, but those of you who have been listening to these talks and have been studying scriptures will realize that it's good to harmonize these paths. Jnana Yoga, Raj Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. Every person has these qualities: head, heart, hand. If we apply all these forces that are within us towards a common goal, the progress will be faster. But whenever we study a subject, be that Bhakti Yoga, be that Jnana Yoga, be it Karma Yoga, we have to be totally dedicated to us. And this is one mistake that many people make. They are holding on to some particular philosophy, some particular outlook, and they think that everything else is wrong. No, why should anything be wrong? Because there have been people who have achieved perfection by following that particular path. So who am I? Who are you to criticize that path? It's unfair, it's wrong. Whatever religion, there have been people who attain perfection through that. Whatever path, people attain perfection through that path. So don't criticize, never criticize. Just know that when you are studying a particular path, say for example Bhakti Yoga, now naturally they will say that this is supreme, because if they don't say that is supreme, why would anybody follow that? When you study Bhakti Yoga, you have to be like a Bhakta. And when you study Jnana Yoga, you have to be like a true Jnani. The Bhakti Yoga realizes Brahman very soon and goes beyond the three qualities. And then Swamiji talks about soul as is understood in Christianity, etc. And although Swamiji himself has used the word soul many times about to indicate Atman, but that he did simply because his Christian audience would not have understood other words. So he had a chosen group, or rather a group of chosen people. He trained them in the language that he was speaking, and then he spoke out freely. Swamiji explains the will, the consciousness, the senses, desires, the passions, all these combine and make what we call the soul. In Hindu tradition, there are different kinds of bodies. Swamiji will be discussing that. And is a gross external body, and there is the internal body known as Sukshma Sharir, the subtle body. Actually, subtle body corresponds to soul and Ruh, Ruh of Islam and soul of Christianity. Behind this Sukshma Sharir, this Karan Sharir, where there's a thin veil of ignorance. Practically, it's one with God. There's a dividing line of ignorance. And finally, that too goes away. It's Mahakaran, pure Atman. The problem with the Western science is that they confuse soul with mind. Swami says the will, the consciousness as we understand, the senses that is. And the senses, consciousness that is basic understanding, desires, passions, all these combined make what we call the soul. This concept was taken up by some schools of philosophy in India too, but it was shown that no, it's not possible, it's wrong. Nowadays, there is a lot of discussion on artificial intelligence. We have monks here at our university who are experts at machine learning, artificial intelligence. And when they talk to me about these things, I keep telling them that, look, you are continuously thinking of a human being as just a mind, but we are not just mind. We are much more than mind. We are Atman. The problem is that the Western science does not even understand Atman. Now, if they do not understand Atman, how can they work on artificial intelligence? Just beyond them. Because if you have the most advanced robot, it, a time may come when they will talk like Swami Vivekananda. A time may come when they will talk like Jesus Christ. But can a robot impart spirituality the way Jesus did? No, it cannot. Just not possible. So, can I make a distinction between robot and Jesus? Of course, I can. There is first the apparent body, this gross body. Second, the mental self, which is Sukshma Sharir, who mistakes the body for himself, the absolute bound by Maya. Third, the Atman, the ever pure, the ever few, the ever free. Seen partially, its nature. Seen wholly, all nature goes. Even the memory of it is lost. The problem is that when we look at a person, when we look at a body, when we look at this world, we are having a partial view. Because we are having a partial view, things we perceive are wrong. When you take complete view, perception changes. When we discuss this spirit within, feel the spirit within. It's true of the external world too. Feel the spirit there. Try to have a complete look. So, even the memory of it is lost. There is a changeable model, the eternally changeable, and the unchangeable. This Swamiji discusses from the 15th chapter. Those of you who are interested in knowing more about it can listen to our talks, say from the 15th chapter. So Swamiji was discussing 10th chapter, 11th chapter, 12th chapter, 13th chapter, and 15th chapter. In between, there was slight mention of 14th chapter. And then comes be perfectly hopeless. Hopeless normally means one who doesn't have hopes. Here, Swamiji means to say one who doesn't want to have any hopes. That's the highest state. Nairashyam. You are not dependent on anybody. You don't expect anything from anyone. It's not a state of negativity. It's a state of highest positivity. It's a state of highest strength. What is there to hope for? There's a problem, we have such hopes from the world, from people whom we know, from the objects that we possess, from the objects that we want to possess. We want happiness from this person, we want happiness from that object. And Asha Pash Sater Baddha, this is also from Gita. We are so tied down by our innumerable hopes and desires. Be hopeless. Bust asunder the bonds of hope. Stand on yourself. Be at rest. Never mind what you do. Give up all to God, but have no hypocrisy about it. That's the thing. Give everything to God and have no hypocrisy. The problem is that not that we don't offer everything to God. I personally know of devotees. I personally know of many, many persons who believe. Only yesterday, I met one gentleman. He had come from overseas to Kolkata. He also came to meet me. I know him for many years. While discussing, he was saying that, look, I don't have any desires. I didn't want to contradict him because he would have felt hurt. I didn't want to hurt him. Then I explained that, look, the problem is when we say we don't have desires. If you are truly a desireless person, you will be a saint, but you are not a saint. Where lies the catch? The catch is if you move around the world, particularly in India, you will rarely come across somebody who says he has or she has desires, then why is it that not everyone is a saint? Those of you who have been listening to our talks, I think most of us would feel that we don't have desires, we don't have expectations. Then why we are not saints? Because just like sattva getting converted in rajas, rajas getting converted into tamas, our desires and hopes, they get converted into a thousand things. Duty, what we call duty. You feel responsible for some persons. There is a mom. She says, I don't have any desires. I just wish that my son grows up. And even when that son has grown up, mom feels some kind of duty towards her son. Everyone who is in the world has some sense of duty, and duty binds. What is duty? Duty is nothing but desire, desire expressing in a different form. Disease. What is disease? It's just your desires. It's just your desires manifesting in a different way and keeping you tied down to this world. What is knowledge? What is happiness? What is a sense of happiness, trying to be happy? Just name any of these qualities that is there in this universe getting manifested through this person, that person. Actually, these are all manifestations of the same desire. It is very difficult even for a monk to be desireless. Theoretically, we say that we are ready to die. But at the time of death, we get scared. There are thousand things. If you analyze, if you go deeper, you will see that ultimately it is desire. So it says, don't have hypocrisy about it. If you offer everything to God, offer everything to God. It's not that easy, believe me. I can tell you, I can assure you. But I have no hypocrisy about it. Dear listeners, once you truly get a feeling of the spirit within you, will you be bothering about anything else? What is this body? Just an external covering. What's this mind? Just an external covering. You're carrying a precious gem, precious stone, maybe in some casket, some jar, and the jar breaks. Should we weep over the jar? No, it's meaningless because the real thing within that casket, within that jar, was a priceless gem. The spirit within is a priceless gem. Care for that. Everything else is secondary. Swastha, the Sanskrit word for standing on your own self, is used colloquially in India to inquire, are you well? Are you happy? Swastha. आप स्वस्थ हैं? Are you happy? And when Hindu would express, ah, actually, are you well? Are you happy? And when Hindus would express, I saw a thing, they say, I saw a word meaning padartha. Even this universe is a word meaning. So, swastha, Swamiji is discussing lots of things. Swastha. Swa means self, stha means to be. When we ask after the health of somebody, we just meet to ask whether or not he is being what he is. And padartha, objects. This pen, actually is a padartha. Padartha is pad artha. Pad is word. Earth means meaning. That is when we say pen. We think that this pen has a name called pen. This object has a name. No. In Indian languages, in Indian expression, it's the opposite. Pen is an idea, pen is a word whose manifestation is this physical object. So, those who know any of the Indian languages know that the two very interesting words, swastha, to be what one is, and padartha, the object, object which is this, which actually is manifestation of which signifies a particular word. So, ideas are important, objects are not. A perfect man's body mechanically does right, it can do only good because it's fully purified. It's a purified. So a prophet can never do any harm. Prophet can never kill. Prophet can never wield sword that way. The past momentum that carries on the wheel of the body is all good. All evil tendencies are burnt out. A jnani, a saint, his body continues to be. That is because of the past actions. But because during sadhana, he moved away from tamas to rajas and from rajas to sattva. All his bad tendencies are now gone. What remains is everything noble, everything noble. His life is now one of nobility. He'll keep doing only good to others. And then Swamiji moves on to devotion, bhakti. And Swamiji will be discussing on bhakti. It's a beautiful section. The day is indeed a bad day when we do not speak of the Lord, not a stormy day. In India, when we have a stormy day, it's bad. Says no. The day you don't take Lord's name, that's the real bad day. Only love for the Supreme Lord is true bhakti. Bhakti, unfortunately, we have not yet covered any of these books on bhakti literature. In Bengali, we have Naradiya Bhakti Sutra on our YouTube channel in the playlist. Bhakti is defined as supreme love for God. Nothing less than that will do. Love for any other being, however great, is not bhakti. Supreme love for God, that alone is bhakti. Nothing less than that will do. The Supreme Lord here means Ishvara. Because you cannot love Brahman, you cannot love the formless, you cannot love consciousness because that's your being. You can love God, Ishvara. What is Ishvara? Is the manifestation of consciousness within this empire of mind. Empire of mind. Whatever is there is empire of mind. Who is Sri Rama? He is pure Brahman, Nirgun Nirakar Brahman. He will appear as, that consciousness will appear as having a body of, say, Sri Rama. For those who believe in Sri Rama. And same is true of Sri Ramakrishna. The concept of which transcends what you in the West means by the personal God. There is a fundamental difference between personal God and Ishvara. This is a very, very tricky thing because normally people think that God, God of every religion is same. And there are popular expressions that discuss God is one. No, God is not one. When you talk of God in the Western world, and when you talk of God in India, these are two different gods. We are not talking in terms of God of America and God of India. No. The very concepts are different. Why? Because God, God of the Western world, is more like a ruler. He has certain traits. Unfortunately, those traits limit him. He from whom this universe proceeds, in whom it rests, and to whom it returns, he is Ishvara, the eternal, the pure, the all merciful, the almighty, the ever pure, etc., etc. You may say that, well, in the scriptures of other religion too, there are descriptions. Indeed, there are descriptions. But the common perception of personal God in other religions is qualitatively different from the understanding of Ishwar. For us, Ishwar is pure consciousness. And in the ultimate, when you go to the level of ultimate reality, even that Ishvara goes away, only pure consciousness remains. The biggest problem with the God of the West is the element of mind that we have is permanently affixed with that God, which does not happen with God of India. Man does not manufacture God out of his own brain. But he can only see God in the light of his own capacity, and he attributes to him the best of all he knows. These are very interesting statements. I mean, it doesn't require any explanation. When we think of God, we have our own idea of what, what is goodness for me, and we attribute these things to God. But does God have those qualities? No way. God is the God of good. God is also the God of the bad. God is everything. God has become everything. And everything rests in God. Each attribute is the whole of God. Mind it. This is something where the Western world misses out. When we say that, let's say, when we say that God is truth, when we say God is love in India, you'll find that Christians also say God is love. They'll say love is God. There's a fundamental difference. What? Each attribute is the whole of God. That means a particular attribute is not the quality of God. Quality itself is God. Love is God. Truth is God. Every attribute that you can think of. The merciful, when you say merciful, the merciful itself is God. It's, it's subtle, slightly difficult to understand. It's not that easy. And this signifying the whole by one quality is a metaphysical explanation of the personal God. Ishwar is without form yet has all forms. God does not have any form. Yet he is all the forms. When it comes to personal God, that is God that is there in the West, they will never accept that. They will never say that God has become Jesus and God has become Judas, the Iscariot. No, no, they cannot. He is without qualities, yet has all qualities. As human beings, we have to see the trinity of existence, God, man, nature, and we cannot do otherwise. That's our problem. We have to have this trinity, God, human beings, and nature. But to Bhakta, all these philosophical discussions are mere idle talk. They are all useless for a Bhakta. I love God, and there it ends. And I don't care what attributes he has. I don't care whether he creates or not, whether he destroys or not. There's a certain basic understanding that I should have about God, and there it ends. He cares nothing for argument. He does not reason. He senses, he perceives. Unless you can perceive, unless you can feel that spirit within you, unless you feel that spirit within, unless you feel that God is within me, it's all nonsense. It's all meaningless. What's the use? He wants to lose himself in pure love of God. Why talk about this love, this trait, this quality, all these things? Dizzying things. Your mind gets confused. And there have been bhaktas who maintain that this is more to be desired than liberation. Because for a devotee, for a true devotee, liberation, mukti, is inferior for them. Merging in love of God. Now, these are again technical terms. Love of God and liberation, they are all same. But according to some schools of thought, I do not want to be sugar. I want to taste sugar. I want to love and enjoy the beloved. This idea that I don't want to be sugar, I want to taste sugar. It's a very interesting concept that bhakti has. Now, we really cannot explain the entire thing that easily, but we can give you an idea that when there is a sense of separation between husband and wife, between two lovers, the love expressed may be passionate, may not be passionate, but you know that you're not connected. But once you know the connection, once you know that you are one as husband and wife, then the love that is being expressed, there is kind of oneness. And the love that's also intense. At the same time, you don't want your partner to go away. You don't want to be with the impersonal aspect of love. You want the personal aspect of love. Something like that with God. When a common man worships God, the common Western concept of God, God is somebody who kind of intervenes in your affairs and saves you from this and that. But no, it's not that. At the same time, what we have in the Upanishads, what we have in Gyan Marg, path of knowledge, getting merged in the impersonal aspect of God, no, I don't want. But I want to retain my individuality so that I can test. Now, the thing is, these statements, actually, these are not meant for us. And even to discuss these things are kind of sacrilege for us. But because greats like Ramanuja and Madhva, they have, particularly Ramanuja has focused a lot on this. So it has some importance, no doubt. But this we have from the authority of Sri Ramakrishna that there might be a stage and there might be your mental state when you say that you want to be like this. But if God wants you to become one with Him, who can stop Him? So, well, these things are just technical discussions and these are not at all important. But we are discussing bhakti, and in bhakti, God has to be present there. How can you have love unless there is the manifestation in the personal form of pure consciousness? This is bhakti. And this is also the spirit. The spirit that is within us, that very spirit is now coming out and presenting before us as God. Instead of feeling the spirit, now you're able to worship and love God because it's your spirit that has come outside as God. We end here. We'll continue with this. Thank you.